Morning, everyone. Is that height okay? All right. I'm so excited we get to do the first executive panel today, first thing in the morning. Before I start asking questions, I want each of our panelists to very briefly introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and where you work, and a little bit about what you do. We'll start at the end with Mike,
All right.
and we'll come this way.
Thanks. My name is Mike Trusty. I work for Fannie Mae, and I lead talent acquisition and learning and development, as well as our early career programs.
Good morning. My name is Matt Weishi. I'm the Chief Learning Officer at BA Systems, just responsible, accountable for the whole learning ecosystem.
Good morning. My name is Victor Arguelles. I'm with Merit International. I oversee learning design and development from a global perspective.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Prentice, co-founder and CEO of Keep Company. We are a group learning platform that teaches employees the social and emotional skills they need to succeed.
Awesome. My name is Dr. Shannon Arvisu. I'm the founder of Epic Teams, and we help HR and L&D leaders be powerful change makers for their organization.
All right, welcome to all of you. Let's begin. So, why should loneliness and social isolation be a company concern and not just a private or individual one? Adrienne, you want to get us started here?
Yes, please. So every leader in every organization in every industry should care about loneliness for a few reasons. One, I think everyone in this room knows about the importance of psychological safety. It fuels innovation, which can lead to a competitive edge. Psychological safety is not possible if your employees feel lonely and unsafe. After that, we have our former Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, who's been sounding the alarm about the loneliness epidemic. He cited a study that said loneliness is as harmful to our health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So anybody in a people function, particularly HR, if you're trying to limit your healthcare costs, it's time to get proactive about how we can combat loneliness. If none of that is landing, Evernorth, which is an affiliate of Cigna, recently did a study that said it costs US employers $154 billion annually, loneliness does, in terms of their productivity, absenteeism, and turnover costs. And so I think that for a long time, employers think that this isn't their problem to solve. I would challenge everyone to say, maybe we're not paying close enough attention, because loneliness is not only impacting the health of our individual team members, it's impacting organizational health as well.
A lot of our panelists work in learning and development, and now that we can learn in all kinds of ways, we can learn in a community like this. We can also learn asynchronously, which is hugely convenient, but not exactly social. So to what extent can learning be a social exercise that builds community at the same time? We'll start with Victor.
I think that learning is at the center of everything. Maybe because it is my chosen career in life, but I do think that learning is that it's not only the thing that unites all of us and kind of levels the playing field, right? But it's also the thing that is innate to the way that we live. If you think about the way that you learn, the first time you learned something, it was likely by observing the behavior of someone else, likely your friend, your parent, your brother, your sister, whoever it might have been, demonstrated some behavior that you wanted to adopt in your own life. And that need for connection, that need to integrate learning with connection with the people that you respect and are a part of, the community that you're in, never really goes away. And so if you've ever read the work of Lev Vygotsky, he speaks, I see some nodding heads, yeah? He speaks to this concept of social, the social constructivist theory of learning, where we know that people learn better when they learn from each other, when they find community, when they can see and have an experience where they can fail or succeed together. He speaks to scaffolding and ensuring that someone's there to provide that support for you, but it always comes back to this main theme. We're connected together with one main purpose of learning something, and you're learning something every day. So there's no better, and again, selfish because I'm in the learning field, there's no better connection, I think, in any of the work that we do than learning with connection and helping people find connection.
Mike, I saw you nodding your head a lot. What were you thinking of?
Well, that Victor actually does the research and reads, so I appreciate that. No, it's the way I try to simplify it for me is, we're products of our experiences, and a lot of the research that's coming out today about how people learn is not the way that we went to school. It's not in a classroom. It's through the things that Victor were talking about. It's through our experiences. And so as learning professionals, if we can't, or human resources professionals, we have to curate some of those experiences to make sure that we're building the right skills and building the right capabilities.
Do you find that when you're presenting results to executives, what kind of metrics are they interested in? Because you just talked about how the way we were taught to learn in school is not the way we best absorb the information. What about the application side of things? How are you presenting your success, your progress to the business side of things?
For us, it's, with Fannie Mae, there's a lot of, being in the financial services industry, there's a lot of technology transformation that's going on. And I'm adamant, I will kind of die on my sword on this one about getting away from the butts and seats kind of metrics, or the learning hours kind of metrics, because I don't think that really tells us anything. It's about the application. So can we talk about, we went through a big transition recently where we moved a lot of our IT into the cloud using AWS. How many of our employees are able to do that? How many of our employees have been able to achieve the certifications that reduce our dependency on third-party vendors that may charge a lot more? And so you try to make those experiences, those critical experiences, relevant to what the business is trying to achieve, to try to steer away from, okay, how many hours of AWS training did you deliver? That's not really that's not the presenting business problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so completion rate is not particularly important. Are you evaluating on the other side of things for application ability?
In terms of?
Like if what you're saying is that it doesn't matter how many hours were delivered, how do you measure the application?
It is looking at what are the skills that are most important to the organization. What are the capabilities that we need? And I mentioned the technology side. It's also looking at our leadership capability, trying to get as close to that as possible to get away from, and it's a much harder thing to measure because there is an inferential leap that you have to make in order to be able to do that. But I don't think putting a chart up in front of our executive team that says, we trained 80% of the organization. Mandatory training is the bane of my existence, but we have to do it. Some of us were talking about it earlier. Yes, I'll put that up there, what the completion rate and all of that is. I was just having this debate with our CISO yesterday. That doesn't necessarily correlate with us being safe. It's our ability to recognize threat in the moment and be able to apply what we learn, not the fact that I completed the annual InfoSec training. So it's trying to get that shift. That makes sense.
Could I add to that as well? I think one of the things that I try to land with my business partners is that we are behaviorists. We're looking to change behavior. We're looking for that change behavior in the field in whatever respect that might be. And I think when we get caught up on an assessment that purely just shows that you read something and you memorized or remembered something, that's not application. And application is really where we live. We want to make sure that that person does something in the way that we want them to do it because there's a real good reason we want them to do it that way. There's an impact for the business. It's safer for them. It's safe, whatever it might be. There's a reason we want for them to behave that way. And so I always try to reframe that thinking for my associates or in my team, but also the partners that we work with that don't understand what an instructional designer does or why we're in this space. It is to change behavior. It is absolutely 100% helping those understand what we want them to do and the way we want them to do it.
I pulled us slightly off topic, though that was extremely helpful. Appreciate it. I'm curious then what kind of tools can be used to facilitate the social aspect of learning. Matt, is there something that you're using, maybe technology, maybe a learning format? How do you bring people together to learn at once?
Yeah, so we do have, I would call more of the traditional spaces for social learning via our LMS. You can go join a community there and kind of shop kind of your interests and join similar interested folks to talk about it. We have collaboration tools, which I'm sure you all have, like Teams and stuff like that, which builds on that. One of the things we do that I think has been very powerful, and it kind of connects to what the last question as well, in terms of how do you influence executives that what you're curating in this learning experience is valuable and they should pay for that, is a little bit of storytelling. So one of the things that we do is case-based learning. It follows, as a tool, as a learning tool, it follows the methodology of Harvard Business School, where you build a case. We use real company cases. They're about 95% factual to a company situation, whether it's a proposal, an execution of a program, a failure or a success. You learn a lot from both. Yeah. But it's about storytelling. So you curate a group of people from all different parts of the company, people that wouldn't normally find themselves in the same room or connected with each other. So from different sectors, different functions. You have legal sitting with engineers, sitting with craft, general managers that run maybe a craft trades sort of business, to someone that might run a very technical or intel and security type of work. You bring those people together for learning, and just in an old learning sort of traditional sense, there's the 70-20-10 principle. Whether you agree on the numbers, it's still the magnitude of the experience. Well, in the curated social learning environment, you get all of that, and you accelerate the learning, because now you don't have to live through a failed program or a successful proposal which takes months and years to learn from it. You can learn from it in just a couple days, so you get that accelerated learning. But what comes out of it that allows you to influence executives is the story where, and this is a true story, where a general manager of a ship repair, which is very blue collar trades workers, connected with a general manager that supported an Air Force customer on a very technical, literal rocket science type of folks working for them, connected them together on earned value management, where they hadn't been doing it before. And those connections that amplify the business case and the sharing and networking across is that social learning that if they hadn't crossed paths, they would have never learned that skill, that capability that they had, that they've already created the wheel on, that they can now transfer that over internal to the company. So through case-based learning, as a tool, we've created that social learning ecosystem. Yeah.
I understand at Fannie Mae you're working backward from company values to create experiences. How are you doing that?
Yeah, so in addition to my day job, I'm also the executive sponsor for skills-based volunteerism. And a lot of what we're trying to do at Fannie Mae focuses in on housing affordability and some of the things like that. And so we do, obviously there's a lot of accountants that work for a lot of people with a finance background. One of the programs that we support in partnership with, it's actually a junior achievement program, is some finance training that you can go in and do, finance park programs that you can go in and do, middle schools and high schools. It gives our people an opportunity to go and showcase what they know and take some of their skills and teach, which is a great way to kind of further develop and refine those. And then from a business standpoint, people that manage their finances well are more likely to get mortgages and be good investments. So you can kind of in a roundabout way link it back to the mission of the business, but it's a great way for not just doing like a Myers-Briggs as a team building. Let's go into a school and do something where we're actually educating people and applying some of those skills and refining some of them in practice.
I'm curious for the panel, are assessments like Myers-Briggs, are they in vogue currently, or some variety of those?
I find that when they are used, it's a little bit of a crutch. It's a little bit of a proxy, because what people really want to do is they want to create connection and they want to find a way to relate to one another. And personality tests are great for that. Like, oh, you're this style. Yeah, exactly. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if you really want to use an assessment to help people grow, the best assessment is to ask each other, hey, what do you see as my strengths? Hey, are there some blind spots that maybe I should be attentive to? Would you be willing to support me in that? That's real growth, because then you're enrolling them in the actual process of being invested together, and you're providing that level of mutual accountability and commitment. It's super low tech. Like it doesn't cost $100 a report to do this work, but I find that it makes a big difference.
Well, let's stick with that then. What kind of opportunities for connection do companies often miss that you find are great opportunities?
Yeah. So as a sociologist who works in the enterprise, I'm always interested in knowing what are the key behaviors that help teams do their best work. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if you look at an organization, you have two systems. You have your people system and you have your work system. And if you want to improve your results, you really have to optimize both. But it's hard to optimize both. And so we think about what are some of the key interventions that give you that big lift, low resources, low investment of time, but also make us look good as HR and L&D leaders, because if people are taking time out to learn, they want to make sure that it's high value add. And one of those key interventions is peer coaching. And we found time and time again at every level, at your leadership level, instead of doing the typical leadership 360s where you hire an external coach and they interview 20 of your colleagues and then you get this 20-page report that's kind of full of criticism that you don't really want to look at. We say, let's not do that. Let's bring our team together and let's just ask them these questions, and then they co-create their action plan. And then we actually teach everyone to be a coach, bring them together every couple of weeks, try this script, see how it goes, and it does an enormous job of creating ripple effects of connection and engagement across the org, especially for HR and L&D teams. That's one of the things we also realized, is that HR and L&D teams also need the opportunity to build these skills themselves and use them with their own teams, so that way they can then fill the cup of all the other teams that they support.
I have one other
please.
more discrete suggestion. It's just like injecting more humanity into the workplace. Like one human experience we all will go through at some point is grief. And I think we've been talking about the importance of first-line managers, and we have heard from so many members that they will lose a family member and their colleagues or their manager doesn't know what to say, and so they don't say anything. And if we, as like leaders in HR and L&D and managers, show up for people in that transition and when they need it, it would build incredible connection between the two individuals and back to the organization. And so I think training, empathy training, or even in particular circumstances around how to support your employee through grief would really be incredibly impactful.
Is that something, you don't need to bring up a story of grief, but have you had a great connection with an immediate manager in your career where you felt like their empathy skills really let you feel comfortable?
I've had both. I've had experiences. We're always learning from what went well and what didn't go so well. So yeah, but I think it's just, belonging, seeing and hearing people. When we're talking about connection, there's like systemic things that we can do. But if we just remind ourselves, like, how would I want someone to show up for me in this moment, and use that as how you're going to show up for them, I think it's just really like, it's a good frame to have.
You brought up, Adrian, the loneliness epidemic and the problem that can create for employers. There's also been a lot of calls for return to office. Do you think that's going to help fix the problem? Is that going to be sufficient to address loneliness?
Yeah, I think it's part of the solution for sure. I won't go too much on my soapbox here, but I think a major ill of our society right now is our lack of community and connection, in terms of, church membership is down, we don't know our neighbors, like we're not connected even to I look on Aura, the app, to tell me how I feel. Like we're like not connected to ourselves, we're not connected to each other. And I think work has the opportunity to be the last frontier, right? So if it's done right, it can be incredibly impactful. Harvard Business Review, their cover story, I think in November, was about we're still lonely at work. And in that study, they said people who came to the office 3 days a week were less lonely than people who were fully remote, but there was no difference between people who came in 3 days a week versus 5 days a week. So just like data point there for anyone who's thinking about this. I think the core thing is that when people are in the office, we need to make it count. We hear so much that people come into the office and everyone's door is closed. Or, it's there, the purpose is training and development, but then the senior leaders aren't there. They bring the students to the classroom, but the professors aren't there, kind of a thing. So I think there has to be a ton of intention around bringing people back to the office, but it can be really, really impactful for the loneliness epidemic. A couple things that we have seen work, spotlighting leaders. So again, bringing humanity back into the workplace, spotlight your leaders and interview them to talk about them as whole people. So what challenges might they be having? Because then people can feel seen in that. ERGs are incredible vehicles, but so underfunded. And so if the idea is come back to the office and we'll have some like forced fun, that's not going to do it, right? We have to like really empower the leaders of the ERGs, not just tell someone that they need to do it, but make it a position of leading an ERG as a development opportunity and something to aspire to. Easy way to do that is to pay them more to do it and then give them a budget. So I think bringing people back to the office is a piece of the puzzle. And then like I'm loving this conversation about group learning. We call it the force magnifier effect. So where we typically pick up is ERG like nails the social connection in the right way, but then you still need to teach people the social and emotional skills. And the only way to teach people interpersonal skills is in a group. It's absolutely like a necessity about how to ask for help. You can read the book or look at the webinar, but that's not gonna help you apply it, as we've been talking about a lot. So I think there's a ton of value to being back in the office, but of course it's an organizational, cultural decision.
Well, I want to talk about remote and hybrid work and how you go about creating a sense of community if that's your setup. Matt, any recommendations?
Yeah, I think it's just keying off a word you said, it's intention. I think, I know prior to 2020, people weren't sitting on stage talking about remote work at HR conferences. That was not what was the main thing. So we're still in this grand experiment that's only like 5 years old, because before that was the norm was like a 540, and that was 100 plus years in the making, right? So if we think we're gonna solve it in 3 to 5 years, we're joking ourselves, right? So intention on all levels, meaning one of the ways we do it is in our leadership curriculum. Anytime we are curating leadership development, whatever that is, and we have some programs that are programmatic with multiple courses, and then we have individual standalone stuff, but we are ensuring that we are upskilling managers and other employees. It can be individual contributors as well, but upskilling managers as a focus to be inclusive of remote and hybrid workers, making sure that we're intentional when we set up working groups, or we have working groups that set up conferences, we have working groups that set up different learning experiences, and making sure that we have a remote representative on that group. I think my theme today is probably going to be a little bit of storytelling. You mentioned ERGs, stuff like that. So I'm an advisor for a veterans ERG, and we do a thing called Stories of Service, where we bring out the humanity, where a veteran will, like a lunchtime call, like a virtual call, just tell their story of service and just bring out the humanity of people. The key though is when you see leaders doing that, telling their stories, it has a big impact. It humanizes them as well. But bringing in the remote and the hybrid workers. Hybrid workers are a little bit of 3 to 5 days, it really doesn't make a difference. The key is, I saw heads shaking out there in terms of when you come into work and everybody's just closed the door. When I come into work, I know that how lonely I am when the lights go off in the hallway, because there's no movement in the hallway for like an hour. So, but that's the sense you get, like, why did I come in today? But I also see the flip side of that. I see the flybys that I get when people stop by my office and say, hey, Matt, I was thinking about you. And they just start a conversation. And it could be a personal conversation, like, how was the football game? Or whatever it is, you get those type of connections. On the remote workers, though, what I would say is the intention being not to make sure they're not excluded. It's easily to happen in terms of town halls that are done. You have virtual people on there, making sure that you're monitoring them, making sure there's a way that maybe the chat is seen by the people that are in the room on screens, and making sure that they're included, that they know they're being heard in the room, even though they're not sitting there. So we're very intentional about those actions. Yeah.
I'm curious to know, what are the characteristics of a company where employees develop really genuine connections with each other? Maybe that happens naturally. What have you seen?
One of the primary characteristics is that an organization builds its collective intelligence. Like that is the secret sauce that we're all aiming towards. We want people to collaboratively solve problems well, no matter what type of environment we're in. And we know that happens when they have a foundation of psychological safety and trust, and they have the skills to help each other plan their work well, coach each other when there's setbacks, reflect on what happened, look at those case studies, and these are a set of behaviors. I love that you said that you're a behaviorist, because you can actually look and see what are the 10 behaviors that indicate that we are actually psychologically safe with one another. How often are we acknowledging and appreciating each other, for example? I love giving teams the opportunity to reflect on that, because then they themselves can say, oh, this is interesting. We don't do that well. Okay, let's create a little action plan to make that happen. And the ripple effects are tremendous. I mean, I've just got done working within Department of Commerce for 2 years with their chief data officer team. And the whole key there, we're America's data agency. We have to be on the innovative forefront when it comes to AI and it comes to managing census data and economic data. And across the board, the only way we were able to get people's best thinking is if we created a space of psychological safety and trust. I just want to let that simmer for a moment, considering like the work that our federal agencies, what kind of culture that our federal agencies need to do their best work to provide for the future of our country.
Victor, I saw you nodding your head. What's on your mind?
Actually, what's really on my mind is that I was really saddened to read that people are lonely at work. I was really saddened to think that my team could be potentially suffering from loneliness at work, and what role I play in helping that. While I'm listening to the other panelists speak to concepts like psychological safety and other items, I wonder if what our role is in making these concepts more easily understood by all of our population, so that they understand what that type of psychology actually speaks to and what does it feel like. I wonder if we spend enough time as well helping them seek out relationships and connections. I think so far, so far, a lot of our discussion has been on what role do we play as leaders in building connection, and of course we do. We absolutely do play a massive role in building connection, but I wonder how we equip our associates that are in our offices, at our resorts or wherever it might be, who don't have that skill set to build that connection, who want to build that connection and maybe are afraid to step out, maybe for ridicule, whatever it might be. I do wonder if we're doing enough to prepare those individuals to seek those connections that we're talking about.
I find it interesting. Gallup has been doing this research for decades now, and consistently, the one thing that leads to people being engaged at work is if they have a best friend.
Yeah.
It continues to be the case. And speaking to like what are the ways to do that, when we bring the teams together, we just said, here's a script. Just ask your fellow colleague questions like, how are you feeling today? Obviously, but like, what are you trying to do this week? What's getting in your way? Like, what are some things you could do? And it helps to just like open up pathways of communication that isn't in our normal everyday script.
But it's so scary, isn't it?
Yeah.
I kind of think of
Absolutely.
it like, I haven't been single for a long time, thankfully, but I can't imagine being out and dating someone and having to meet someone. I think it's
Absolutely.
exactly the same. It really, there's a clear difference, right? But outside of that, it's you're being vulnerable and putting yourself out there for someone that may reject you for whatever reason it might be. Whatever, it might be your level, it might be your expertise, it might be the leader that you're aligned with. I mean, these are all real things that happen, that have happened to me. And you have to be courageous. We talk about these 3 C's at Marriott. One of them is courageous and curious. The other one's curious. And I think that building that as a vital strength within our associates, it's important to be courageous, to ask the questions and be curious and lean into the moment when it comes to making that best friend or building a relationship with a leader you've never worked with before. I think community means a lot of things to a lot of different people, and it should, right? That's the whole purpose of community. I align with a community that's different than what my counterpart would be. For example, I'm a senior leader member of our LGBTQ plus ARG at Marriott. And talking about funding, we are very well funded. We just donated $1 million towards Capital Pride that's happening here this summer. So I think that there's just a lot of different ways to go about this. But again, I just wonder, are we teaching our people to be curious? Are we teaching our people to be courageous and seek out these relationships? Because it is really easy for us to just go back and go, oh, nobody likes me. I hate this job. I don't want to go back. So yeah.
I'm not much for hacks, tips and tricks and hacks, but I'll share with the group a little bit of a secret that we do internally and we work with our clients, and it's called the check-in. So it is on a scale of 1 to 10. Before a meeting, everyone takes 60 seconds. So it's the beginning of our team meeting. On a scale of 1 to 10, how is work going? How are your relationships and your family? And how is your personhood? Because I think a key to this and part of the vulnerable nature of it is that we're not just talking about work. The way that people are going to build relationships and a best friend, you don't talk to your best friend about one thing, like one piece of who you are, right? You talk to them about more. And it becomes a habit. And then they can go take it not just to their team, but to the people that they work with on site and otherwise. And it's this little I see you, I want to know who you are. And some people have various levels of, comfort and responsiveness, but you got to plant the seed.
Absolutely.
Matt and the mic.
Well, just something you were saying just made me think about, we take it for granted that the 12 years or however many years of education people get prior to coming into being an employer, that it's preparing them for the kind of skills and behaviors that will make them successful in a business sort of environment. And I don't see that exactly. I see a lot of gaps there and a lot of areas for improvement that we as corporations have to take on sort of an education mindset that we're the continued education part of developing those skills. I talk to employees that were relatively new, and I'll just in passing, I'll say, hey, who's your manager? And they'll tell me. And I'll be like, hey, how you like your manager? Well, I haven't talked to him in 2 months. So it's like, wow. Even through all the leadership development we have, that's very intentional that I talked to earlier, we still have that going on and miss it. So it's I'm not gonna say it's never ending, but it's definitely a continuous effort to build those skill sets. We don't have leadership competencies, we have behaviors. And we use that language very intentionally because we are very focused on the humanity skills. We don't call them soft skills or hard skills. We call them humanity skills because it's the people that are engine of our business.
Yeah, I'm going to build on that on the early career front since I have the pleasure and the opportunity to lead that program. Anybody coming out of university now had a very bizarre education experience. 2-3 years ago, it was a bizarre college experience. Now we're starting to get people that had a very disrupted and bizarre high school experience. And you're talking about metrics. I could rattle off, our intern conversion rate and all of that other good stuff. What's important from a storytelling standpoint, and I enjoy watching, is we do make an effort to bring all of our interns and our campus hires in for dedicated programs. So it's an interesting debate about travel budget and all that other good stuff, but we find it important to bring them in to get that in-person, that social experience. One of my favorite metrics, and I will bring this into conversations with our senior leaders, is when I go through the cafeteria, how many of our early career professionals are sitting together. And because I meet them all, and we're a relatively small company, 8,000 people, it's great to see IT people, with data science people, with finance people, with business people, and they're creating their communities. So hopefully they are finding a best friend. And I talk about that's if we want to retain our early careerists, they have to have that social network. We have to kind of bake that into how we run those onboarding programs.
Who else is working with Gen Z and folding those folks in? Yeah. Adrian, I'm sorry. Yeah,
we just launched a program called Ready to Launch because it was largely in response to a lot of the talent leaders we were talking to that said their noisiest issue was senior leaders saying things like, Why don't they just meet expectations? They're lazy. They don't want to work. Right? Like, and so it was these kind of age-old things. And we said, this isn't a one generation thing. You've got 5 generations in this organization, and how can we all work together to figure this out? And so I've got lots of thoughts. I think they had a bizarre learning experience. We also have had 5 tectonic shifts in the workplace happen. And we've never had that before, right? AI, mental health crisis, remote, we have an aging population. There's so much change. And so training this new generation of professionals is hard for us because they're growing up in a world that we didn't grow up in. It's completely different. And so the one punchline that I've been hearing from the junior professionals is frankly that they feel gaslit. They start on day one and they're like, I'm expected to meet these expectations that were never, ever relayed to me. And so making the implicit explicit and dealing through, running through these times of change and communication friction, it takes a lot of intention. I know.
Shannon, what would you add?
I'll just share one hack for creating common ground amongst generations. It's an exercise called Journey Line. And you literally just bring people together, give everyone a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and then you ask people, what are the experiences that you've had that have really shaped who you are? And if you see them as positive and affirming, put them above the line. If you see them as challenging, put it below the line. And no matter who you are, how old you are, what background you're coming from, everybody's got a zigzag line. And then you give folks the opportunity to share their stories and acknowledge them for their stories. After that, everyone's got so much respect for each other.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Let's give nice thanks to our panelists. Did an excellent job.